Ladies and gentlemen, as we seamlessly transition into our next panel discussion, we delve into a topic of utmost significance, navigating India's ESG and sustainability landscape. In a world increasingly shaped by environmental, social, and governance factors, this conversation is both timely and critical. The legal frameworks governing ESG and sustainability play a central role in this narrative, guiding businesses towards more conscientious practices. As we embark on this discussion, we invite you to gain insights into the growing importance of ESG, India's evolving legal frameworks, and the path to responsible and sustainable growth. I now call on stage, in fact, back on stage, Anusha Soni to conduct the session and our esteemed panelists to kindly join us.
Once again, a very warm welcome. We have a very esteemed panel, and in today's day and age, when we aspire to grow at a phenomenal rate, set an example for the rest of the world, what can be more relevant other than sustainability to talk about? Many of us growing up know sustainability as an intrinsic concept or a value that we have known as Indians, as individuals. For it to be translated into international protocols, regulations and laws is a journey that India has undertaken. There are successful milestones that we have achieved, much more that needs to be done. Anubhavji, beginning with you. The present ESG regulatory and the legal framework in India, to what extent we have been successful in translating the goals that India has set for itself?
Almost till 2011, when the first guidelines for social responsibility came in. Now, this was a good start, right? Because at least for the first time, somebody was saying or was putting in a framework which led to kind of reporting of corporate social responsibility. Now, when you talk about corporate social responsibility, it is still a very narrow term as compared to what a ESG is, but still it was a good beginning.
Right.
And then in 2012, 13, and then came 14 when the new Companies Act came in, right? It was for the first time in 2014, the 2% stipulation came for CSR, that you have to spend 2% of your net profits on,
yes.
on the CSR. And that was also the first time when Section 166 of the Companies Act 2013 put a responsibility as part of the duties of the director to oversee their responsibility, and India is one of the first countries where a direct responsibility has been put on the board of directors to oversee their responsibility on environment, their responsibility to the communities, and to the general interest of all the stakeholders in the company.
Often profitability was seen as an antithesis to sustainability. Are we past that mindset?
Yes. We are past that mindset, because in order to continue to be profitable, you have to make sure that we are sustainable. Otherwise, the profit is just going to go into a dark hole soon. And I think that's something that as my opening remark, I absolutely think that, as Anubhav has put it, we are already down somewhat the social path. Governance is becoming more and more important, Anusha, as we are moving forward, because we have seen a lot of businesses fail due to lack of governance in the past, even though they have a lot of money by the investors, but just not having process in place, how the decisions are made, or how the decision tree is already existing to make these decisions instead of promoter just deciding whatever they wanted.
And as we, taking that aspect forward, the environmental concern, we're at a nascent stage. A country like India has so much of biodiversity, environmental concerns to rightly take care of, and we are moving in that direction. What role, a good role, a constructive one, can technology play?
When National Voluntary Guideline reporting came into picture by MCA in 2009. So that's something I would say the entire picture has changed. But the emphasis on the E part of the ESG came in 2014 when the French Convention was taken place, and the global warming, it was taken a pledge that we have to reduce the environment, global warming by 2 degrees by 2050. That was just a statement. But if you see the work which have to be done behind that particular statement, it's not easy to achieve. And that can be achieved only when we will have a right infrastructure and technology in place.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Hiranmai Ralabani. She's also with us on the stage, General Counsel of WeWork India. What is your experience in terms of how well it is implemented? Is it a checkbox approach that often is spoken of? Or the concerns, how real they are, they've really translated into concerns in the boardroom?
As we see, India is a growing hub for all startups. We have so many unicorns here. And then what we've also seen with the investor sentiments is that they would rather invest in companies which are actually having sustainable practices in place. So this has not just become something which is there for the heck of formality, but companies are actually investing into making their businesses absolutely sustainable. I mean, I can probably speak from my own experience in my own company. WeWork is obviously a very recent company. We started operations in India in 2017. And we are already looking towards having proper sustainability goals, right? We recently published our sustainability goals where we are very clear as to what we want to do by probably 2027, whether it's energy consumption, because that's where most of your emissions come out, or we are very clear that we want to reduce that as much as possible. And we've started implementing, methods for bringing that down. Whether it's waste management, we've started working with our landlords. We have about 50 buildings right now, and we're working with each of our landlords to ensure that the waste to the landfills is reduced by whatever amount that we can. And we have a goal of probably getting it down to 90% by 2027. Investors have become very, very anal about the fact that you need to anticipate any environmental laws that are there, not just the ones that are there, but anticipate what is going to be there in the future. And you need to have those compliances in place. They want us to follow IFC, even if you're a private company, right? That's the standard they want us to follow. So definitely it's not a checkbox anymore.
When you're investing, or when an investor is investing in a new age startup, it's the day and age of startup, it becomes all the more important to think about sustainability, because to make amends at the beginning is much more easier than established businesses making changes. Have investors become more conscious?
Yes. Again, investors have become very conscious, and very rightly so, because I think investors actually hold the power that they can make these changes. However, investors have become smart, and they do recognize that startups do not have money. And therefore, the new ways that we enforce for startups to become socially conscious and environmentally responsible at the very get-go is that when we give them our money, we say 2% of this is earmarked to you becoming environmentally conscious and socially responsible, and we need a report on a quarterly basis on the progress that you're making. 2% of this money or 3% of the money, depending on the business that you're investing in and how much work needs to be done.
Do we have enough coverage? Are enough companies liable or bound to report under the ESR standards? Does it need to widen, or is it enough for now?
Anva, we spoke about the national voluntary reporting guidelines in 2019 or 2009. When that came into the picture, that was again applicable to the listed company. The BRR reporting came in 2015. Again, it was applicable to some top listed company. In 2020, when BRSR came, it is again applicable to the listed company. In 2023, when BRSR core came, it is again applicable to the listed company. So you have enough scope. I have given you the data. So are we saying that only these listed companies are pollutants? They are the people who are not following the ESR reporting framework? No. There are companies which are small scale, which are there in the market, which are equally responsible to achieve your ultimate goal of governance.
Anubhavji, you had a few interesting thoughts about the ambit of the present framework. And can MSMEs be included? They are the backbone of Indian economy after all.
They are, but I think if you go into the BRSR format, the reportings are quite comprehensive. It was it was music to the ear when my fellow speaker was rattling all the standards, right? And that's the effect of having a framework, right? When you start measuring, then you start doing, right? And I think what this framework has brought in is exactly that, right? It provides the opportunity, one, to measure what you're doing against a framework, right? And then bring this discussion at the board level. It is not the, and it is also the investors, right? Investors, why are investors investing in ESG-led companies? Because it's just the speed in which these guys are creating wealth. Look at Tesla. It crossed $1 trillion in less than a decade, and it created a change in an automotive industry which was ICE or combustion engine led for the last 100 years. So I think there's a whole momentum in the whole economy which is leading to a better adoption of ESG. And that enabler is a very important factor, I think, in today's scenario, where companies are more and more challenging themselves to become more green.
Thank you so much for that very fascinating discussion. I think we need so much more of it. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please have a huge round of applause for our wonderful panelists?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Well, as we step into the realm of our next panel discussion, we shine the spotlight on the driving forces behind India's progress: the infrastructure, energy, and oil and gas sectors. These sectors, often described as the lifeblood of economic development, are dynamic, ever-evolving, and central to the nation's growth story. The oil and gas industry, too, plays a crucial role in meeting energy demands and exploration. And to delve into the heart of these sectors, I now call on stage once again Ashmit to moderate the session and our esteemed panelists. Let's welcome them with a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
In terms of setting the agenda, what are the main legal issues that each of the speakers are facing in their respective areas, and to give us an understanding of what those worries translate into, again, a broad understanding. Mr. Shastri, I'll come to you first.
Thanks, Ashmit. Thanks, Forbes India. Thanks, Legit Quest. A wonderful session, and thanks for inviting me. And as Ashmit said, this is, I guess, the most challenging post-lunch session. We will try to keep it as engaging as possible. Now, Ashmit has raised a very interesting point, that infrastructure. And yes, infrastructure indeed is, I guess, the buzzword. And I was hearing the past panelists, and they're talking about India being a $5 trillion economy or $10 trillion economy in coming times, which we definitely will be. But then the engine right now for that growth, or one of the engines for that growth, is infrastructure. Now, why it is so? So before coming to the legal challenges, I'd like to just touch upon what is the infrastructure sector right now in India and how it looks like. Now, as they say in economics, there's a concept of multiplier effect. And infrastructure's multiplier effect right now is one of the largest and highest. Some experts say it is 3 times, some say it is 6 times. Now that means every single rupee invested in Indian infrastructure will give a fillip to 3 times to the Indian economy and Indian GDP. And that is where the infrastructure becomes so crucial for our growth story.
Interesting. Mr. Deliwara, let me come to you just to understand again, if we are to achieve that strike rate, if we are to go 400 plus, what are those challenges that are keeping us from getting there, from your perspective?
We need to improve a lot in it. There is scope of many improvements so far as the regulatory sector is concerned. Awareness is a main important thing in this kind of the cases, because people are still running. Like if we are seeing a decade back, then we were nowhere. Today we have understood what the problems are, how to just resolve those issues. But still, there is a scope of the improvement and the awareness in that section. So maybe, of course, the literacy is to be there. We would be talking about the commission, the regulatory commissions, how they are functioning and how better they can work on that. So we need to focus on that first, and thereafter we would be able to achieve the 400 plus targets what you are asking and what we are seeking for.
Interesting. Mr. Jad, let me take that across to you, that when you speak of, again, litigation, dispute resolution pointed out as one of the major concerns, give us a sense of how your sector has developed through these legal challenges. The reason I say that is because from the conversations just before the panel discussion, you had pointed out that the very roots of the sector go back to the Indian courts, the MC Mehta case. Yes. So just if you can give us a sense of that journey and giving us a picture of what are the latest challenges now that confront you.
Yeah, thank you very much. The major, when there was a lot of pollution in the Delhi and NCR towns, the Supreme Court had to step in and they directed that all the public transport and all authorities should cooperate to have CNG in Delhi and NCR towns. And in NCR towns. So with the directive of the Supreme Court, 8 major cities were identified to be public transport to be converted on CNG and natural gas so that the pollution levels come down. Seeing the benefits of CNG in the NCR, the government of India made a policy that it will have a gas-based economy in the country, where gradually all the cities, major cities will be switched over to CNG and household will be converted to PNG so that the dependence on the LPG and the fuel wood for villages, that was a challenge, should go to CNG. Today, after 2007 when the PNG-RB Act came into force, 15 years down the line, 98% of the country today is bid out to different entities. The government of India's thrust is to convert all into a gas-based economy. CGD sector has been accorded utility sector status. There's a priority allocation of APM gas to CGD sector over fertilizer, power plants, and other sectors. So in coming 5 years, you will see all the country covered by pipe natural gas to the households, CNG stations, and transport sector. But having said that, with the regulator coming in, there were challenges. The already existing players, who were mostly PSU promoted, they started feeling the challenge of exclusivity, monopoly coming to end, and being controlled by a tariff regime. They were totally monopoly of a single entity in those areas. So different litigations came into be filed, challenging the exclusivity regulations, that they were contrary to the Act. There should not be a fixed exclusivity period. It should be based case-to-case basis. There should be a hearing to each individual entity, not across 5 or 8 years, as was given the regulations.
While we do dive headfirst into renewable energy, whether that's solar, that's wind, along with new energy also comes new regulations and new concerns. So just give us a picture as to what these challenges look like now that we are a few years into this journey.
So I would start by saying that we have seen the G20 declaration where, tripling of solar capacity to around 500 gigawatts by 2030 and $4 trillion annual, turnover or revenues coming in. So what do you need? You need lenders, you need FDI inflows, you need confidence. But at the ground level, there are a lot of problems which are coming up. Like, just for an example, the Solar Energy Corporation of India, they have PPAs, there's no standard PPA. So there are different clauses. So this all creates a fluidity, doubts in the minds of the lenders. Then they have now come up because if generation is there, you need transmission. And transmission is one of the biggest, areas where there are a lot of problems, teething problems. So like the biggest now is the GNA regulations which have come in. It has shaken up the entire power sector because no one knows how this transition will happen. The industrial consumers today are being asked to compulsorily take open access. It is like, I explain you in layman words. So it's like a national highway. So from your house, they are saying we will give you the road, we will give you the access, but you have to compulsorily use that route. Whether you don't want to go or you don't want to go, but you have to use it, you have to pay GNA charges. So these are the problems which, they should pragmatically resolve. So these things have to be resolved. These are all leading to litigation and so many roadblocks, doubts in the minds of the lenders.
Mr. Shastri, I'll come to you. There are a whole host of legacy issues that affect infrastructure growth in our country. One of chief amongst them is ROW and land acquisition. I just want to get a sense. These are legacy issues. We've been dealing with them. What is the way out of this?
We need to have and address all these issues, like in energy space, or like Mr. Jad said, in the gas distribution space. So I totally agree that this is what we have to address. Now coming specific to land acquisition and ROW issues that you have said, and that they are the pain areas, and especially from the road and highway sector, if I talk about. See, we have a concept of DPR, which is across in most of the infrastructure sector, that there is a detailed project report that has been prepared before you embark upon laying down that infrastructure. Now, in that DPR, they take all these things into consideration that, okay, there's a land I have to acquire. So if I have to do a 4-laning to a 6-laning, obviously they will be doing a detailed project report that, okay, I need, say, this much kilometers, 100 kilometers of land, free land, so that I can do this expansion. Now, the problem here is land, and then they have compensation, and then they have a lot of things there. The problem there is now sometimes if out of that 100 kilometers land which you want to have a toll land, I'm talking about land and road highways, if the 5-kilometer land in between also is not available, then the entire project becomes unsustainable because I will not pay a toll that I will run for first 50 kilometers on toll road, then 5 kilometers I will go a village kacha land, and then again 40 kilometers. So that is something which, as a user experience, I will not pay a toll for those things, isn't it? NHAI being one of the parties mostly in those cases, because land acquisition is a very difficult ask for a regulator also to perform. Slowly and gradually, I feel it is more about information and more about accommodating people that will lead to the solution of these things.
Ashmit, talking about ROW, so what important thing is that so far as the transmission sector is concerned, ROW and land acquisition are totally different. People are understanding that it is a land acquired by the project company, whereas it is not. And that awareness is very much important to give, that we are not acquiring your land and we are paying the compensation to them. So, of course, your site people or the people who are working on the site, they should be given a common understanding that you are not going to acquire that land. And whatever you are going to damage their crop or something, you are going to get compensation out of it. So they are going to give the compensation. So that awareness is very much important. We are in India, as he rightly said, and we are emotional people. Come on now, like, let us address the elephant in the room. We are an emotional people. We are attached to our properties. But again, it's not a fundamental right, it's a constitutional right. And these are the projects that we are talking about is for the public interest and the public welfare. So there has to be a way out and there has to be an awareness for that.
I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us and for sharing their insights. I think it's been a very valuable discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashmit.
Managed to,
You have been a
and
great
we hope
moderator.
that there is some
Ashmit, you've been a
insight.
great moderator.
Thank you once again.